Google's going all out with the new Pixel Watch 4. With Google Gemini AI assistant right on your wrist, the company's betting you're looking for a smarter assistant closer at hand. But the watch offers more than that. With a handful of helpful and useful improvements, it seems, at least on paper, like the new Pixel Watch 4 is an upgrade. But before you lay out pre-order cash, you might want to get hands-on with one in person, because I found at least one feature that might be a little bit oversold. I had the opportunity to try the watch out for about 4 or 5 days ahead of its public release. In this review, I'll talk about what's new and improved, whether the features work as advertised, and I'll total up the pros and the cons and let you know if I think I can recommend this new Android smartwatch for you. A quick thank you to Google for supplying me with the 41mm watch in advance so I could spend some time with it hands-on. While the company did gift me one of the devices, it didn't have any input into this review. The quick overview of what you're getting is an Android-powered smartwatch which uses Fitbit monitoring technology to keep tabs on a boatload of health metrics. I've got the 41mm LTE version here in matte black aluminum with the Obsidian active silicone band. During my testing, I didn't enable the cellular service, and if you don't, you'll need to rely on having your phone close by for certain tasks. But even without the phone handy, the watch can still do a lot, including tracking all of your health stats. Of course, like all smartwatches, this one can also push you notifications, your phone calls, and other updates right to your wrist when it's connected to an Android phone. For now, Apple users are not able to get texts or call notifications. Pixel Watch is designed to work exclusively with Android phones. Let's zero in on what's new. One of the most talked about new features pre-launch was the charging cradle. This version charges the watch on its side. Now known as the quick charge dock, it will display almost like a tiny alarm clock, letting you view the time, current battery percentage, and time left until fully charged, and when your upcoming alarm is set to go off. Now, I will say this is a vast improvement over the Watch 3, which simply shows you a charging screen or it goes dark. One of the features I was most excited about for this watch was the extension to battery life. Now offering up to 30 hours of battery life when you're using the always-on display in the 41mm version, and up to 40 hours for the larger watch. This is the longest ever for a Pixel Watch, and that gives it even more longevity than before. In the previous generation Pixel Watch 3, both the large and the small size got just 24 hours of battery, so while the jump here isn't huge, it does get you about half a workday's worth of extra juice. If you are willing to put the watch into battery saver mode and let the screen go dark, you can get up to 48 hours of battery life. Now, I'll round out the battery topic by noting that Google says you'll get 25% faster charge times than previous generations. With Watch 4, I can go from 0 to 50% in about 15 minutes, which would give my Pixel Watch 4 about 15 more hours of battery life. Technically speaking, the watch screens are exactly the same. Both Watch 3 on the left and Watch 4 on the right use Gorilla Glass 5 for durability. They have AMOLED displays, and the two size offerings of 41 and 45mm stay consistent. Google says Watch 4 has an ever slightly smaller edge or bezel. It's 15% smaller to be exact, but side by side, I barely really notice it. Not surprising, I suppose, since you're talking about measurements smaller than a millimeter. What I did notice, though, was the slightly brighter screen. Google has bumped up the brightness to 3000 nits over version 3's 2000 nits. Google's been touting what it calls a domed display, but in truth, this was not a standout feature for me, and even holding the Watch 4 side by side with the Watch 3, it wasn't immediately apparent. Take a look here with me. I think what Google means by domed is that it's softened the edges of the watch face just a smidge. You can see the Watch 3 on the left has a little more of a right-angled corner, whereas the Watch 4 on the right is more rounded. But honestly, I gotta say this is not something to crow about in my opinion, because it doesn't seem to actually do much or really elevate the display in the real world. In fact, looking at these two watches side by myself, I doubt I would have even noticed the softening of the corners if it wasn't pointed out to me. Now, to be clear, I'm not complaining about the watch. I guess I'm just not seeing the slightly softened edges as a major selling point. One of the other new features is that the Pixel Watch 4 is now partially repairable. You can now replace the screen or the battery if something goes wrong, which should help you get a lot more life out of it. Lastly, on the new front is a stronger speaker.
You're in a tough spot, but a firm, polite letter can get results.
This is designed to cater to using Gemini on the watch, but it's bound to drive people in public mad if you crank it up.
Your phone number, your email address.
A lot of the rest of the specs from Watch 3 to Watch 4 are the same. Both use aluminum cases with that customizable side button and haptic crown, plus IP68 durability for immersion in water up to 164 feet. Now, Google is really pushing the Gemini integration in all of its devices, and that is also apparent here in the Watch 4. Now, technically speaking, you can access Gemini in the Watch 3, but Google has been boasting about a new Raise to Talk option for Gemini, but since that feature wasn't yet enabled when I did my testing, I won't be able to try it out. For now, I call up Gemini by holding the small button above that digital crown. Gemini is, of course, Google's next-generation assistant that uses AI power and large language model conversational interactions, so you can have a much more natural conversation when you need help with something. It's built into all the newer Google Pixel phones and Android phones, and it is actually also available on iPhones too. In terms of how cold I should expect it to be and how much snow we're going to get. When you ask for something using your watch, you'll get a voice response from Gemini courtesy of that new speaker, and it actually does go a long way to making it more audible and understandable. A transcript of your conversation will end up in the Gemini app on your Pixel phone as well, since trying to read back the written responses on the tiny watch screen can be a little tedious. And speaking of tedious, I did find a pretty substantial lag in certain responses with Gemini on the watch. Take a look. I've asked it to summarize the most recent email to my Gmail on my phone, which is nearby, but it's really struggling.
The last email you received was on Wednesday, October 8th, 2025.
I was glad to find simpler queries like asking for recipe recommendations or the weather forecast do happen faster. AI is definitely a work in progress. When it comes to the health metrics and data your watch can keep track of, Google has basically copied and pasted from version 3. And again, this isn't a complaint because I'm a big Fitbit fan. Of course, the Pixel Watch 4 tracks things like your steps and your exercise. It can monitor your heart rate, track blood oxygen, skin temperature, and breathing rate. There's actually dozens of health tracking features, so if there's something in particular you're looking for, check Google's website to see if it's offered, and chances are it is. I've been a huge proponent of Fitbit for health and fitness tracking for so many years, and I find Fitbits to be incredibly accurate at tracking steps and exercise, as well as displaying what I believe to be a really accurate heart rate. I also like to lean on Fitbit to give me a current health picture if I'm starting to feel run down. Now, not much has changed in the Fitbit perspective from Watch 3 to Watch 4, so I'll leave it at that. The Watch 4 is also wearing yesterday's underwear when it comes to the safety features. No knock, since the safety options are actually pretty deep. Google has carried over things like Safety Check, where you can set a timer, and if you don't respond, it can alert an emergency contact. There's also fall detection, car crash detection, and emergency satellite SOS communication. The watch also maintains other handy conveniences, like the ability to use it as a remote camera control or a remote control for your Google TV. You can also view things like your Google Nest cameras or doorbells and talk to whoever's there using the watch and the Google Home app. And naturally, Google Wallet comes along for the ride, so you can tap to pay with your wrist as well. Overall, there are a few small tweaks here that mean if this is going to be your first Pixel Watch, it will definitely be fully loaded for you. But if you already own a Pixel Watch, like the Watch 3, there's probably not enough here to justify an upgrade. Let's go over both the pros and the cons to find out if this watch might be right for you. On the pro side, I love the design of the Pixel Watch 4. I'm a big fan of this device all the way around, and I do appreciate the tweaks that Google has been making. I find the watch to be extremely comfortable, and it's easy to read, and it's got lots of options for customizing. With plenty of Fitbit health metrics, this is an ideal companion if you want to keep tabs on your fitness or your activity. And I actually like the new charging dock for a couple of reasons. One is that it charges things a lot faster, and the other is that it allows me to see the watch screen as a tiny alarm clock if I want to charge overnight. I appreciate the small increase to the battery life as well. Gemini does come along with the Watch 2, and it's also available on older Pixel watches, so I don't know that that's a huge plus for this particular version. Now, since I mentioned Gemini, that's where I'll flip to the downsides. I feel like there are still some tweaks to be made using Gemini on the watch, since it does involve quite a delay depending on what you're asking it to do. But of course, the rapid pace of AI advancement might mean that this downside goes away fairly quickly after launch. And not a downside, but just a disappointment that the watch doesn't integrate at all with iPhones. So if you want to get the most out of this watch, you do need an Android phone, unless you don't mind it not being able to access things like your calendars, emails, and text messages. In short, like I said, if this will be your first Pixel Watch, you are getting a fantastic device, and I can definitely recommend it for you. The Pixel Watch 4 41mm LTE version, like I have here, sells for about $5.99 Canadian, and the starting price in the US is about $3.49. And if you want to learn more about one of Google's newer Android smartphones to use your watch with, I've reviewed the Pixel 10, or check out my in-depth review of the Watch 3 right now.